My boss used to call me Sparrow. Every single time he walked past my desk. Little comments, little laughs, but one afternoon, I told him I was planning to lose 22 more pounds. And the look on his face? That's when the room stopped laughing. If you've ever been the quiet target in a room full of loud personalities, this one's for you. Hit subscribe, like the video, and comment below if you've ever dealt with just a joke that wasn't really a joke. Because today's story isn't about shouting back. It's about letting silence do the damage. Let's get into it. I'm 36 years old. I work in an office that is exclusively male, not mostly male, not a lot of men. Every single desk, every single voice in meetings, every single joke. Testosterone hangs in the air like stale aftershave. You know the type of environment. Competitive, loud, banter-heavy. The kind of place where emotions are, weakness and sarcasm is currency. Now physically I stand out and not in the way you'd expect. I'm 185 centimeters tall, just over 6 feet, but I weigh about 70 kilograms, around 154 pounds. On paper, that puts my BMI at 20.5. Perfectly healthy. My GP confirmed it. Blood work perfect. Heart good, no underlying issues. I eat, I lift occasionally. I sleep fine, I just don't put on weight easily. High metabolism, genetic lottery. But visually, I look lean. Long arms, long frame, narrow face. And in an office where half the guys pride themselves on deadlift numbers and protein shakes, that makes me the visual outlier. And in environments like that, anything different becomes entertainment. Let's call him High Septon, because he carried himself like some self-appointed moral authority of masculinity. Mid-50s broad, balding, loud laugh. The kind of manager who thinks he's one of the guys. The kind of boss who believes that if he teases you, it means he likes you. And at first, the comments were small. Careful in the wind, Sparrow. Does HR know we hired a scarecrow? Are you sure you're eating, kid? Sparrow, that was his chosen nickname. In my native language, it translates to something small, frail, fragile. It was always said with a chuckle, always loud enough for others to hear. And here's the important part. The guys laughed, not maliciously, not cruelly, just reflexively. Like that's what you're supposed to do. You laugh when the boss makes a joke, even if it's not funny, even if it's at someone else's expense. And I laughed too, because that's what you're supposed to do. Right? It's just banter, it's not one big insult. It's repetition. Frequency. Associating your identity with a punchline until it becomes background noise. And here's the thing. I genuinely didn't care what he personally thought about me. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know how I train. He doesn't know what I eat. He doesn't know my medical stats. But what bothered me wasn't my ego. It was the pattern. Because when the boss normalizes body commentary, everyone notices. And not everyone in that room had thick skin. Some of those guys were heavier. Some were balding. Some had their own insecurities. And the culture of we joke about bodies here slowly becomes permission. I remember sitting at my desk one afternoon. He just walked away after another eat something, Sparrow comment. My coworker next to me, bigger guy, maybe 110 kilos, went quiet. Didn't say anything, just stared at his screen, and it hit me. If he's comfortable commenting on my weight publicly, what message is that sending to everyone else? The bully doesn't have to be mean. He just has to normalize it. The jokes continued for months. Not every day, but enough. Enough that when he walked toward my desk, my body subtly tensed. That microsecond pause where your nervous system goes, what is it this time? That's when I realized this wasn't harmless. Because harmless doesn't trigger cortisol. Harmless doesn't make your shoulders tight. One Thursday morning, it escalated slightly. He walked by during a team discussion about lunch options. Someone mentioned ordering burgers. He glanced at me and smirked. Not like Sparrow here needs one. There it was again. Laughter, I smiled, but something shifted internally. I wasn't angry. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. Because teasing only works when the target defends their current state. What if I didn't? What if I escalated it in the opposite direction? What if instead of defending my weight I implied I wanted less? And that's when the idea formed. Not revenge through aggression, but discomfort through exaggeration. I would agree and then take it too far. Yesterday, he walked over to my desk around 2 p.m. Casual conversation about project numbers drifted into food somehow. He leaned back in that familiar stance, the smirk loaded and ready. So, are you gonna eat today, Sparrow? And something about his tone, the familiar rhythm of it, I felt zero anger. Only precision. I didn't Look up immediately. I let a beat pass. Then I said calmly, nah, I'm actually on a diet, trying to lose weight. Silence, he blinked. What? I finally looked up. Completely neutral expression. Yeah, been feeling kinda bloated lately, wanna drop like 10 kilos. I watched the math happen in his brain. 10 kilos, 22 pounds, on someone already thin. His face shifted from amusement to confusion to alarm. But you can't do that. I shrugged. Why not? You're not really on a diet, are you? There it was, concern, not mockery, concern. And for the first time, the room wasn't laughing, because now he wasn't the dominant voice. He was uncertain. I didn't elaborate, didn't wink, didn't smile, just turned back to my monitor and resumed typing. The conversation died. He stood there for 3 seconds too long, then quietly walked back to his desk. And here's the part that made it exquisite. He avoided me the rest of the day. No Sparrow. No food comments, no jokes, just distance. Before, the joke implied I wasn't masculine enough, not big enough, not solid enough. By saying I wanted to lose 22 more pounds, I weaponized vulnerability. I forced him into a moral dilemma. If he continued joking, he'd look like he was encouraging a dangerous eating disorder. And nobody wants to be that guy. Especially in a corporate environment. Especially as the boss. Power dynamic flipped without raising my voice, without HR, without confrontation. I gave him a scenario where continuing the joke made him the villain, and he felt it immediately. That's why he retreated. Not because he was humiliated, because he was suddenly aware. And awareness is uncomfortable. Something interesting happens when a bully realizes the stage lights aren't on him anymore. He shrinks. That afternoon, the office felt different. Not dramatic, not explosive, just subtly off balance. The kind of tension you can almost taste in recycled office air. Keyboards clicked louder than usual. No one mentioned lunch again. And hi, Septon, he kept glancing over at my desk like I just casually announced I was planning to jump off a roof. Which is ironic, because the imaginary weight I claimed I wanted to hit? A BMI of 17.5. Clinically underweight, unhealthy, concerning, and here's the thing, I never once said it jokingly. That's what unsettled him. If I'd smiled, he would have laughed. If I'd winked, he would have bantered. But neutrality is terrifying. When someone doesn't play their assigned role, the script collapses. In that office, I occupied a predictable character archetype. The lean guy, the easy jab, the harmless target. A safe place to test humor. But when I responded with, yeah, I'm trying to lose 10 kilos, I stepped outside the character. Suddenly, I wasn't the joke. I was a potential liability. And bosses don't tease liabilities. They avoid them. Because if that joke were ever repeated now and I responded with, yeah, I've been struggling with body image. That's documentation territory. That's HR territory. That's lawsuit territory. He realized that. Instantly. And that's why he backed off. Not because he's evil. Not because he meant real harm. But because his comfort relied on shared laughter. And I quietly revoked consent. I expected him to return to normal within a few hours. He didn't. The next day, he didn't look at me, not once. He passed by my desk without commentary. No Sparrow, no Scarecrow, no wind jokes, and here's where it gets fascinating. The other guys noticed too. You could feel the shift. When the alpha changes behavior, the pack recalibrates. One coworker leaned over mid-morning and whispered, "Everything okay with you?" That question carried weight, because it wasn't about the diet. It was about the dynamic. He had noticed the disappearance of the nickname. And I just said, yeah, all good. And that was it. But something had changed. There's something insidious about male-only workplaces that rely heavily on banter. It's framed as bonding, but it thrives on hierarchy. Who can take the most jokes? Who dishes them out? Who gets quiet? And here's what a lot of people don't talk about. Even if you personally don't feel hurt, the environment affects others. I genuinely didn't lose sleep over Sparrow. I sleep fine. I eat fine. But imagine someone in that room who was struggling with weight. Maybe too heavy, maybe too thin, maybe recovering from an eating disorder. If the boss openly critiques bodies disguised as jokes, it tells everyone your body is fair commentary, and that's corrosive. Microaggressions don't explode, they erode, and erosion changes behavior quietly. You stop eating at your desk, you bring salad instead of pasta, you avoid being noticed. You shrink in ways that have nothing to do with weight. That night after the incident, I replayed it in my head. Did I go too far? Was it manipulative? Was I dramatic? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't lie. I said I was trying to lose weight. Trying doesn't mean succeeding. Trying doesn't mean healthy. Trying means intention. And the discomfort came from his projection, not my statement. He panicked because he knew what 10 kilos would do to my frame. He panicked because he suddenly saw the visual endpoint. He saw unhealthy. He saw extreme. And maybe just maybe he saw how ridiculous his original commentary had always been. It's been a week. Still no Sparrow. Still no weight jokes. Conversation has returned to neutral professionalism, but here's the subtle victory. When someone new joined the lunch table yesterday and made a throwaway joke about someone skipping dessert, Septon shut it down. Immediately. Hey, let's not do body commentary. Silence. I nearly laughed. The irony was delicious. He corrected someone else using language that sounded suspiciously self-aware. And that's when I knew. The lesson stuck. Not because I shamed him. Not because I threatened him. But because I showed him what his joke looks like when taken seriously. Nothing exposes casual cruelty faster than literal interpretation. He attempted to reduce me to a stereotype. I expanded it to absurdity. He retreated. And the culture adjusted. No raised voices. No HR forms, no dramatic walkouts, just one sentence. You're not really on a diet, are you? That tremble in his voice, that was accountability arriving unannounced. There's a phrase people hide behind when they don't want to examine themselves. It's just a joke. But what makes something funny? Shared amusement, consent, mutual understanding. The moment one person stops laughing internally, it stops being bonding and starts being control. That's what a lot of people misunderstand about workplace teasing. It's rarely about hatred. It's about hierarchy. In male-dominated spaces especially, humor becomes a ranking system. Who can take it? The most interesting part? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. There's a difference. Vindication often looks like cheering, but this felt like equilibrium being restored. The awkward tension lingering in the air, that wasn't hostility. It was recalibration. And sometimes recalibration feels awkward before it feels normal. We're wired to avoid discomfort, but growth almost always passes through it. This resonates because nearly everyone has experienced some version of this, being reduced to one trait, being teased under the shield of humor, wanting to push back but not wanting to explode. And the fantasy usually involves a dramatic clapback, a room-stopping speech, an applause moment, a mic drop. But real power, it's often quieter. One sentence, delivered neutrally, left hanging. You're not really on a diet, are you? That tremor in his voice, that wasn't fear of me, that was fear of himself being the problem. And that's a much more sustainable lesson.
If you like stories where people finally get what they deserve, click the playlist on screen and binge the rest.